There's all of these things that are like a little bit hurtful. It's not terrible, but it's a little bit there, and you never quite know when you're going to run into it.
Totally. It's kind of like, this sounds very dramatic, but it can feel sometimes like paper cuts.
Yeah.
Like you're just, moving through the world and you're like, oh, I have to think about how I present myself.
Yeah.
I can't be too angry. And that, like you said, hurts you internally.
Yeah.
It's like, there, you've got a little nick. Someone...
I'm fed up and sick of you. Don't lead me on again. Don't act no more. I feel nothing for you. Just leave me alone.
Hi everyone, I'm Stacey Lee Kong, and this is Friday Talks Take It to the Group Chat, a video series where I assemble the perfect panel, an IRL group chat, if you will, to talk about various aspects of the immigrant experience. And today I'm here with journalist Katherine Singh and actor Orville Cummings to talk about being multi-ethnic or being multiracial, or what word we want to use to describe that, and what it means to belong everywhere and nowhere. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
When you think about your identity, is there a descriptor that resonates with you? Orville, what about you?
A descriptor. For me, that's kind of hard because on the surface, you look at me, you're like, that's a black guy. But if you get to know me a little bit more, I kind of pull people to the side and be like, listen, I'm only 70% black.
Do you give the
30%
exact?
Indian. I do, because I know now. I know the exact thing because I did my ancestry and everything. I'm just like, okay, 70% black, African, and 30% South Indian. Oh my God. 1% Italian. Hey, that's pretty crazy. When I say that I have Indian in me, no one's going to believe me. They'll be like, okay, you're begging. I'm like, I'm not begging. I promise you. Come to my cookouts on my dad's side, you'll see all the Indians in my family, okay? It's just that we really resonate mainly with the Jamaican culture, right? So for me, it's a little bit difficult to present because you two are very racially ambiguous just by your aesthetic, and I'm just like, that's what he is. But I'm just like, no, there's more beneath the surface.
There's more going on.
There's more going on.
Yeah.
And so outside, it's like very like cookie cutter. I'm just black, but inside I'm just like I'm Indian, but like I haven't like explored that side of the culture, and I want to, but are they gonna let me in, because I don't want to learn just online or through books. Like if I'm gonna learn something about a culture, I want to learn it from the people.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, but I'm not a black guy trying to learn what it's like to be Indian. I'm a biracial person that has a part of me Indian, and I'm curious about that side of myself. So for me, it's a little bit complicated, but again, it's not as complicated, I'm sure, as you two, because you're very, very ambiguous with what you are. I thought you were Latina when I saw you.
You didn't know what I was.
I didn't know what was going on, but I'm just like, wow. But I love it, though, because I'm just like, I'm in film, and when you're ambiguous, it means you can fit anywhere.
Right.
I'm black, there's only a certain places they want to put me. You know what I'm saying? So that's how my experience is on and off screen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kath, what about you?
I think similar. We were talking a little bit about this earlier, but it's definitely changed for me. I think at one point I said mixed. I don't know if I've ever said multi-ethnic.
I don't think to be fair, I'm not sure that anyone is saying multi-ethnic. I'm like trying to make fetch happen.
I feel like even though, doesn't feel like the most all-encompassing term. Maybe it's closer to an all-encompassing term. But more recently, I've also, I feel like, started saying I'm West Indian, but my mom is white.
Yeah.
So that's how I introduce myself. And funnily enough, or not even introduce myself, but funnily enough, that's kind of how my dad has framed it to my sister and I whenever we've had these conversations around identity, which has always been, I'm not sure how it is with your family, but a little complicated. And so my dad, his kind of refrain for so long was just tell people you're West Indian and your mom is white. So
it doesn't roll off the tongue, but something that you said kind of stuck out, this like, that it's not one all-encompassing term. I think I want an all-encompassing term, and I think there isn't one.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's probably no actual phrase or description that will perfectly explain who I am and also apply to other people.
Yeah, I don't think there is. But I think it brings up two questions or two thoughts, which is, first of all, do we need one? With something I always struggle with, like, do we need one term that is all-encompassing and neatly puts us into a box? But then I also relate to that and understand that because I feel personally growing up, I always those census boxes or, when you had to fill something out that said, I'm white or I'm South Asian or, how you identify. And on the West Coast, it was not really diverse at all. I literally grew up in a city called White Rock. So
A little on the nose, but
Yeah,
okay.
pretty on the nose.
it was
yeah.
on the nose. But I just think I so desperately wanted to be able to fit into literally a
box.
census box.
Yes.
Which is kind of sad to think about. But yeah, I don't know that we necessarily need a term, but what do you tick on the census box?
I can never remember what I do. Nothing fits. Like all of I think there is an option for Caribbean, but I think it is always Black Caribbean, which I'm not.
Yeah.
And then South Asian doesn't work because I'm not that kind of Indian. So it's just like an existential crisis every time. But this kind of plays into like so much of my experience is being ethnically ambiguous. It's are you Filipino? Are you Indian? Are you Mexican? Are you what are you?
Yeah.
And I'm always not really sure how to feel about that. So I'm curious how your ethnic background shapes how you move through the world, if it does at all.
It makes me almost more, what's the word? Like on the defensive in some ways. Not like I'm walking around angry all the time, but I was saying, earlier in our conversation that I live in a neighborhood in the city that is Polish and Ukrainian, and so there's a lot of lovely older Polish and Ukrainian men that when I'm walking up the street will say "Ola" to me. The amount of times I've received that, and I can understand, I guess, from maybe some perspectives why if I appear a bit ambiguous to people, but it honestly really pisses me off because I'm just going about my day getting my groceries, and I think some of it is also just knowing perhaps there's something behind that.
Right,
When
like
there's,
it's not like an innocent hello, actually.
yeah, but I think it really just pisses me off because it makes me feel like I'm just moving about my day in this neighborhood where we all live, and you have to make some sort of assumption about my identity to even interact with me, which, it kind of upsets me.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's fair. I feel like these things should not affect me. Like they should not bother me. The people not being able to categorize me or whatever, but it does.
Yeah.
And the pretending that it doesn't just makes it worse. So,
I know, yeah.
Orville, what about you though?
I feel like when I was younger, when I first moved to Canada, because I grew up in Jamaica, I felt like I took on this, now I think, unnecessary responsibility as a Black man moving in a predominantly white society. When you come to Canada, I'm just like, I don't want to fit into their stereotypical box of what a Black man is. And what I kind of like analyzed growing up is just that, they view us as like very angry and so I always try to suppress my anger and not let anyone see it. But in return, that's only hurting me because I feel all emotion is supposed to be expressed because emotion is energy in motion, right? So if that motion is not going anywhere, it's stagnant and it hurts the body and makes you sick. So I didn't know I was doing that to myself for a long time. I thought I was being responsible as a Black man, that I should do this and suppress these things so no one will look at me a certain way. Because if a white guy got angry, in my perspective, it would be like, oh, that guy's just angry, whatever, he'll get over it. A Black guy goes, oh my God. I was like, let's calm down, I'm just mad. So what that allowed me to do is really sit with myself and be like, okay, I do want to express my anger. It's not necessarily I'll be angry at something, but we have all these emotions that need to be channeled and expressed. So I'm like, I need a channel to like, an outlet. For me, it's going to the gym, it's working out. I'm an actor, so my job allows me to express all my emotions. So I'm like, thank God for that. Because if I worked in an office and I had pent up anger, I'd burn it down. But that's
But you don't.
But I don't. But that's only because I only felt that way because I was suppressing the
Yes.
anger. If I was to express it in everyday life, stub my toe, feel that way, and I feel okay with it, then I can move through society. But like because I felt like I had to hold it back, it really hurt me because because my identity didn't allow me to express certain things. But as I got older, I'm just like, who cares? I'm still human at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying?
That fully goes back to this idea of it being shaped by how others perceive you.
100%.
Right.
So then on the flip side, how does being mixed or being multi-ethnic or however what words we use, how does that impact the way you think about yourself?
That's interesting because if you had asked me this question when I was like 20,
Yeah.
I would have like a very robust answer.
Yeah.
Now I'm just like, I don't really view myself based on my ethnicity anymore. I'm Jamaican and I think at least a lot of people think that's like the coolest thing to be. It's like, oh, you're from Jamaica, that's so cool. But, yo, reggae,
I'm a
reggae, but.
Trinidad,
And they do the accent, but, reggae, blah, blah,
Right,
blah.
right.
And I'm like, okay, you don't need to do all
Settle
of that.
down,
It's like,
yeah.
we both know I'm Jamaican, it's fine. You've been to Jamaica a couple of times, you love the beaches, whatever, that's great. So for myself, I'm just trying to like be the best version of the human I am. I can't control how other people perceive me as my race, but I can control or influence how they perceive me as Orville talking to them right now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's what I always try to bring to the forefront. It's like, look at my personality first, even though it's hard to look past race, because that's the first thing you see is what this person looks like. So you're automatically going to have like an assumption of how they're going to behave and how you should treat them and whatever. But I'm just like, I'm trying to break that barrier, but I understand that it's there.
Kath, do you think about yourself through the lens of your ethnicity?
I think less so now than maybe I did at one time. And I wonder, it's kind of funny because I think maybe becoming more immersed in the West Indian community when I moved to Toronto, even though that's something that I might initially feel would make me think more about my identity, I think it's actually helped me think less about it, if that makes sense. I don't know that it does. Yeah.
No, it does. Because it's like you're not coming at it maybe from a place of lack or longing. Like you're more immersed and so it can just like be there.
I think that's it. I do really think that's it. And then I think also just from becoming more immersed in my West Indian side and, you know, with friends and who are also West Indian or from the Caribbean, it's also just made me realize how fractured isn't the word, but to have kind of a West Indian identity for me is to have many different identities in itself, right? Because you've come from India, you've come from China, you've come from all these other places, and then there's the Caribbean influence, and so it is a lot of different identities in one, and so I kind of feel like almost coming to terms with that in a way has just made me think less about where I necessarily fit into it or feel less and feel like I don't fit into it. If that makes sense. Yeah.
I think for me, I do think more about my identity than I used to. I went through a whole thing in university where I was like, it's okay, you're part Trini and you belong in Canada and you can hold those two things and it's fine. And then didn't think about it for 15 years as much. And then recently have been like, but where do I belong? Like, who do I belong to? What does it mean to not be able to necessarily feel deeply connected to the Chinese part of my ancestry or the Indian part of my ancestry or the German part of my ancestry? But those are like why I look the way I look and why my last name is what it is.
Yeah.
So it feels much more like at the forefront of my mind.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird because I thought I had figured it out.
I know. That's
like
kind
very
of,
good.
that's what I'm figuring out too, is you never have it figured out. You
Yeah.
just with
Never do.
anything, it's just always evolving. But that is interesting. I wonder, what kind of is making you
Oh, I don't
think
know.
about
I'm
that
like
more?
about to be 40 and I don't feel like I have anything figured out. So why don't we just throw identity in there too?
Yeah.
Just another thing
fun.
on top. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just make my therapist earn her money. But when we think about, or I think when I see conversations about being biracial or being mixed, they kind of fall into one of two categories. So there's either this is like, we're the future, we're so progressive, we're like whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna be a little bit brown one day. Or the way that we talk about it is like feeling torn between, or like who do you belong to more than, like there's
Right.
something more
Yeah.
negative about it.
Right.
And I'm curious if those are the conversations you're seeing,
Right.
or if you're seeing other ones entirely.
Right. For myself in my personal life, most of the conversations around being mixed is very positive because I feel like the world, like it's 2025, you know what I'm saying? Everyone's immigrating, migrating, everyone's having mixed babies and everything, so people are getting more like accustomed to like people being more biracial. However, there are people who are still like, like let's just say I come in and say like I'm half brown. I'm not half brown, but I'm like a third. So I half brown, half black, and like I'm hanging out with a bunch of brown people, and I say, why are you guys too? Technically, in a way, it's like you can't claim that now because you didn't claim us when you were with your black friends. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of it kind of like creates that rift when you try to identify with one side of your race to appeal to that side. So I try to not necessarily like appeal to like one, because again, I'm trying to like get to a point where I'm just chilling with whoever I'm chilling with. But again, it's hard to fully look past identity because we can't disregard it because it's a part of who we are, right?
Yeah.
But it's like when it becomes so focused on that it changes the way you treat and talk to this person, then that's when it becomes a problem. It's like, why are you talking to me like that? Because of the way I look and because of my background?
Yeah.
That shouldn't change anything. And
Yeah.
who are you talking to right now? Just because you had an experience with like someone from Jamaica that's like this, and I'm from Jamaica, doesn't mean you're gonna have the same experience. Because in Jamaica, if you actually go to Jamaica, people are so different and varied. So I'm just like, you're not gonna get one thing from one race at all times. And that's where stereotypes come from, you know.
Yeah.
But I get it.
Yeah. What do you think, Kath?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of that, I think so. I still think, and maybe it's skewed a bit just because of the industry that we're in, journalism. I think it still can feel kind of easy to fall into telling those two types of stories.
Yeah.
And then also, not even just telling them, but being a part of the industry as someone who's mixed, or I'm West Indian and my mom is white, yeah, that idea of it as a win, I feel like is sometimes being pushed back on people, like BIPOC people in certain industries. So it's been a win, but now there's too many of us, or things. If anything,
Yeah.
I feel like the conversation's changing that way, and that's not necessarily for the better.
No.
At all. But yeah, it does kind of feel like there's more nuance with these stories, I think, in these conversations, but I think that nuance is still coming from things like this. And
Yeah.
within the community, it's not, like you're saying, there's still people out
The
there.
way that we're being perceived.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that is actually such a good point, because so much of those spaces are more amenable to you and I for very specific reasons, like
Yeah.
being fairly ethnically ambiguous, being light skinned, being like
Yeah.
not demonstrably any one thing, I think helps in some cases.
Yeah, I feel like it protects you. Protects is such a weird word, but
Well, it feels terrible.
It feels
but
terrible.
Professionally.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been in instances where people have made derogatory comments about South Asian people. That's obviously a contentious topic right now in Canada with immigration, and and people have made derogatory comments, and I'm like, you don't realize that that's part of
About you.
that's part of my identity, that's part of my family. You're talking about my papa, you're talking about, people I know from within my community, and like, in some ways I hope you don't know, because I hope you wouldn't say that to my face if you did.
Yeah.
But so it protects you in some ways, but then I think
But then exposes you to these things that are like dangerous or harmful.
yeah, exactly.
And you can't even, I at least feel sometimes that it's the pressure is to not necessarily call it out. And
Yeah.
earlier in my career, that's probably what you would have gotten. And then now I'm a different person, but
Yeah, I think it's this assumption people might make, like if they do kind of know, say I'm West Indian, it's that assumption like, oh, but this isn't applicable to you.
yes.
Because you're not maybe, fully embedded in that community, or this proximity that I personally have to whiteness almost removes me a step from it or something. But it's like, yeah, that doesn't make me feel any better.
No, that didn't help at all,
No,
actually.
what you said is still shitty. Yeah.
It would be really like, can you tell us a little bit more about what it feels like to hear someone talk about the ethnicity that you belong to,
Yeah.
not realizing that you belong to it?
It just makes me feel a bit invalidated, also quite misunderstood, especially when it comes from people within your circle. I've had family members who have made comments, and even though perhaps, I don't want to say they're well-intentioned, but they don't understand kind of the implication behind what they're saying. It feels like this identity, me being mixed race, being West Indian with my mom being white, it is still such a big part of my identity. So to have someone just kind of casually say something, maybe off the cuff, it hurts, because you're like, you just don't understand how this impacts me and what this means. And I just think it's also kind of interesting. My sister and I have had conversations just around race with my family and with my parents specifically. And again, like, I love my mom to death, but she just doesn't have that experience of growing up in White Rock or
Yeah.
in these spaces, and as someone that's not white. And she doesn't quite understand sometimes when we try to talk to her about it, what that means and what it means to kind of be constantly navigating spaces. And like her experience where we grew up is different than my dad. When we first moved to White Rock, he has this kind of anecdote he shares where he was walking our dog and he was walking down the side of this road and there was a taxi parked nearby, and a guy that was just out, a white guy, came up and was just like, "Oh, is that your taxi?" And he was like, "No." And the guy made a comment about South Asian people being taxi drivers, and that was his experience. And then my mom had a very different experience, and my sister and I were kind of navigating in between that. And I think, in the last 5 years, just with a lot of conversations that are happening, we've had the conversation about what did you think about raising multiracial kids, or like, did you kind of think about that? And I think we were both a little surprised just to hear that that wasn't something either of them had thought about. Either of them, yeah.
Interesting.
I think it was interesting, though, to hear that, yeah, they just hadn't really thought about it too much. And my sister and I were both like, what do you mean you haven't thought about this? Like, I wake up every day, and not every day, but I wake up.
But as soon as I look in the mirror, I understand, or as soon as I interact with someone else, I understand how I am perceived.
Totally.
I thought of this twice as you were talking, but that feeling of it being invalidating, like it's invalidating to be not perceived as what you are, and then also invalidating and hurtful to just like hear something mean about your community. To me, that's such a weird part of how I navigate the world, is that there's all of these things that are like a little bit hurtful. It's not terrible, but it's a little bit there, and you never quite know when you're gonna run into it.
Totally. It's kind of like, this sounds very dramatic, but it can feel sometimes like paper cuts.
Yeah.
Like you're just moving through the world, and you're like, oh, I have to think about how I present myself.
Yeah.
I can't be too angry. And that, like you said, hurts you internally.
Yeah.
It's like, there, you've got a little nick. If someone said something offensive about your community, it's been my tendency, and I think we talked about this, yours as well, to kind of try and laugh it off, or not laugh, but just not say anything. And I'm personally terrible with confrontation, even though it's not supposed to be, it shouldn't be a confrontation. But yeah, it's just like you're kind of building and accumulating all these little nicks. And it's frustrating because, yeah, you feel like maybe there's people out there that don't have to deal with that.
Yeah. I've been thinking about cultural connection and cultural disconnection because, so what I was saying earlier, that I don't necessarily feel specifically connected to my South Asian heritage or to my Chinese heritage. Like, it's all mediated through the lens of being Trini. And I was curious if either of you had felt like that. Do you feel closer to or more involved in one part of your heritage than the other? Is it equal? Do you ever think about it?
100%. For me, I feel more connected to my Jamaican side.
Yeah.
Not so much my Indian side, because even the people in my family who are of Indian descent, they identify with the Jamaican culture more. So because that's a big part of my family. Like in my family, it's Indian, Jamaican, and then now a large part of my family is becoming Filipino. So it's like, but they all still identify with the Jamaican culture because it's very prevalent in my family. So their race isn't so much a part of what the experience that they're having. And the Jamaican culture is like very varied. There's no one Jamaican, because the Rastafarians have a different way they perceive the Jamaican culture. I don't know how to differentiate them, but the people in the country in Jamaica perceive it different than the people
rural
in the
versus,
ghetto.
Urban and rural in
changes
the
it.
Caribbean is actually really huge.
Yeah, so it does change a little bit. But for me, I know for myself, I identify with the Jamaican side more. I know my family, like my mom and dad, like they hear me speak because they all have like I believe they just chose to keep their accent. I'm like, there's no way you still have your accent. I'm like, I came up here after you guys.
But you were younger.
But I was young. But exactly, so it was more malleable at that time. But my dad came up here like 12 or 14 years before I came up here. And then I'm just like, bro, you sound like you just stepped off the boat. I don't understand. But I truly believe it's his choice because he wants to keep that connection with his heritage and everything. And I'm like, I respect that, you know? For me, I'm in entertainment. So like having an accent kind of like boxes you in. And I remember vividly, like I went, when I was first stepping into the acting industry and I was looking for agents, one agent said, oh, we can't sign you because you kind of have this like slight accent that's gonna like box you in, so we're not gonna like sign you. And then I had later on, once I got rid of I didn't get rid of it, but like I kind of like toned it down, watered it down, or whatever you wanna say. But like there's some of them who are just like, why are your accent? I'm like, oh no. I was waiting for them to say, put me in a box, but like, but I like that. It makes you interesting.
Right.
I'm like,
there's always going to be someone who gives you the most like mass market way of doing things. Like I think it
100%.
is still a lot harder to
Yeah.
see individuality and uniqueness and understand that as the benefit. But I do think accents are fascinating. Like I literally,
So
am
do I,
like,
yeah.
we need to do an episode on. But because I think you're probably right. I think your dad is deciding to hold on to this
Yes.
way of like this direct connection to
100%.
his parents and his grandparents. And
Yeah.
like I can't really do the Trini accent, and it makes me very sad because then like that is a type of connection that I just don't have.
Yeah.
Like I came here when I was 4 and I tried. It was important to me at 4 in Oakville to assimilate as much as possible. And so now I just can't do it. I sound so stupid and it's really upsetting
Yeah.
actually. Is there something that you wish that people knew or understood about your particular experience of being mixed? Or maybe things that you wish they would stop saying?
Yeah, I think definitely, as you were saying earlier, people are more diverse than when we were younger and mixed, and everyone's doing their thing, which is great. I think I still find it really interesting, just this need we have to really concretely, even though I want to be put in a box sometimes, but I just find it interesting, this need we have to identify exactly who and like what is in front of us,
Yeah.
right? Like those gentlemen I was talking about who say hola when I walk up the
Yeah, yeah,
street. And I know you said people kind of pinpoint you as Filipino and
And are very insistent.
yes, yeah, I remember you saying that, and you're like, I know my own identity.
Yeah.
I'm
Thanks.
not Filipino.
Yeah, it's
You
kind
sure?
Yeah.
You sure that, yeah.
Pretty sure. I'll do Ancestry just
Yeah.
to confirm.
Yeah.
But like no, actually.
It's like that question of, where are you from? And then I say, oh, I'm Canadian. And then they say, well, no, but where are you really from?
Yeah.
So I just find that really interesting that people still want to do that, even in this day and age when there are so many people that are multi-ethnic and with different heritage. So maybe just if they could stop that.
Yeah.
If people could
Maybe
stop that.
a small request.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If specifically white people could stop asking where I'm from in 2025, that would be
great.
lovely. Yeah.
Would be great. Would love.
I think for me, it's more of like the problem I have is like people assuming how I'm gonna behave because when I tell them I'm Jamaican, especially women, when I was like way back, like on the dating apps or whatever, and we're talking, it's like, oh, what's your background? Because it's like you got generic questions or whatever. What's your background? I'm like, oh, I'm Jamaican. Radio silence, and I come to find out it's because women. Jamaican women too. They have this perception that Jamaican men, they're rude.
I already know.
I know.
They cheat a lot. They have a lot of baby mamas. I'm like, sure. There's a small demographic of Jamaican men who are like that, but it's not exclusive because they're Jamaican. They're just those men, and they so
Right.
happen to be from Jamaica. I understand you're making the assumption based off of an experience and what you observe, but I feel like starting with a clean slate with everyone until they prove themselves. If they prove themselves right, I'm like, whatever, true, but like give people a chance to show them who you are before you assume based on what you assume.
Fair. Any last thoughts? Anything we didn't talk about that you think we should?
I feel like a lot of the talks about race and how people perceive race has to do a lot with media. And that's been a huge topic of conversation in my life because, again, I'm an actor, and like when I watch movies and I see certain movies, I'm like, wow, you guys are just, I'm gonna say this. I don't like the feeling when I see someone, they're promoting, I don't like the term black movies. It's just movies that have a large black cast that are leads. Like, there's no such thing as black movies. But when I see that, and I feel this like weird feeling in my gut that if I watch this movie, I'm gonna be sad because most of the media around movies with a black ensemble cast, it's about trauma, it's about this. Listen, we're humans, we all go through the trauma, but we don't need to always sell this race as like they're always fighting for something. I get it. Like the immigrant story is very prevalent, and I'm sure every immigrant parent say the same thing. I feel like they all just gathered together and said, this is the story we're gonna tell. We came with $50 in our pockets. I'm like, you all came with irresponsible. Work and get more money to come here. But I get it. I get what they're trying to say, but I'm just like, but when that is keep being reflected upon us, I'm like, where's the advancement? You know what I'm saying? So I'm just like, the media keeps perpetuating that, that we're stuck in this like thing. Black people are always struggling to get somewhere. I'm like, what about the ones that have made it? What about the inspiration for the ones that already made it? We don't get too many of ththose films, and being seen, shown that in the media. So I want to be a part of that change, it's important to tell those stories because they're true and a lot of people can resonate with them.
Thank you so much for the conversation. I feel like we could have talked for 4 more hours, but I will let you go. I'm sure tons of people will want to learn more about you, though, so tell the people where they can find you on the internet.
Pretty much all over. I'm on Instagram, X, and sometimes TikTok at Katherine Singh.
Yes, and I'm on Instagram at Orville.Cummings. You could search up my IMDb as well if you're ever curious about my body of work as an actor. But yeah, that's where you can find me on the internet.
And on the big screen.
And on the big screen, yes, Morningside, my new movie coming out in February 21st, 2025. So make sure you guys check it out.
Amazing, thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like more Friday in your life, you can follow us on Instagram at _FridayThings, or you can go to fridaythings.com/subscribe to sign up for the newsletter.
Can't you take